Ethan Caldwell blinked rapidly, still holding the flash drive, the world around him blurring as the realization of Maya Johnson's warning sank in. The soft clinking of crystal and silverware seemed distant, almost irrelevant compared to the sharp clarity of her words. Isabella Hart, standing a mere step away, tilted her head subtly, her lips curved into a controlled, faint smile that did not reach her eyes, and Ethan could sense the careful calculation behind it, the silent question of whether he would believe a child over appearances. Maya, small but unflinching, shifted her weight slightly, one foot tapping softly against the marble floor, the leather straps of her worn backpack creaking, and she met Ethan's gaze steadily, every bit of her demeanor radiating quiet certainty and intelligence beyond her years. Ethan, swallowing hard, took a deep breath, letting it out slowly, his mind racing through options and contingencies, each one weighted with the gravity of the accusation and the potential fallout if he acted prematurely or too late. Around them, whispers grew, low at first, then threading through the room like a rising tide, and Ethan noticed the subtle glances from the staff and guests, a mixture of confusion, curiosity, and the faint spark of doubt. He bent slightly, lowering his height, speaking to Maya in a voice calm but firm. "Maya, I need you to show me exactly what you saw." And she nodded, hands trembling slightly as she held out the flash drive, the small metal rectangle gleaming under the chandelier lights. Isabella's fingers tightened imperceptibly on her clutch, a micro-expression of tension betraying her composed mask, and Ethan felt a cold awareness settling over him, the kind that signaled he was on the cusp of a choice that could define the evening, the relationships, and the truths unspoken until now. Maya exhaled softly, almost imperceptibly, and stepped closer, lowering her voice to a whisper meant only for Ethan. "It is all in here, sir. Please, you have to see before it is too late." And Ethan nodded, his eyes scanning the room, noting the subtle shifts in posture, the intake of breath from nearby guests, the glimmer of uncertainty. In the eyes of those who had assumed the evening was perfect. He leaned slightly toward her, taking the flash drive into both hands, the cool metal sending a faint shock through his fingers, grounding him in the present moment, the weight of responsibility pressing against his chest. The murmur of conversation faded further, leaving only the soft hum of the chandeliers and the rhythmic tapping of distant heels on marble, as if the room itself had recognized the import of what was about to be revealed. Ethan's eyes traveled over Maya, noting the determination in her small frame, the braid of her hair catching the chandelier light, the faint smudge of dirt on her worn shoes, and he realized that despite her youth and size, she carried a moral authority that eclipsed the murmuring crowd. Isabella's calm facade wavered for just a fraction, a blink of hesitation, and Ethan knew that every second counted, that the choice to act, to validate the truth she presented, rested on him. "Show me," he said, voice quiet but resolute, and Maya handed over the flash drive, the metal cold and heavy, a small beacon of courage in her tiny hands, while Ethan's mind braced for the revelations it contained, the subtle tension in the air thickening as the room, frozen in anticipation, awaited the first glimpse of what would unearth the hidden truths and confront deception directly. Maya Johnson's small fingers trembled slightly as she pressed the flash drive into Ethan Caldwell's hand, the cool metal grounding both of them in the immediacy of the moment. The ballroom, once filled with the chatter of elegantly dressed guests and the soft clinking of glasses, had fallen into a heavy silence, every eye turning toward the improbable scene of a 7-year-old standing her ground in the center of luxury. Ethan, still kneeling slightly to meet her gaze, felt the weight of the choice before him, knowing that the next few moments could define the evening and the credibility of everyone in the room. He carefully turned the flash drive over in his palm, noting the subtle scratches along its surface, evidence of careful use and the small bravery of the girl who had retrieved it. Maya's eyes, dark and unwavering, remained locked on his, silently urging him to act, to see the truth without hesitation. Isabella Hart, standing just beyond the polished oak table, shifted her stance, the faint rustle of her silk gown the only sound as her lips pressed together in a tight line, the veneer of calm she had maintained for hours now beginning to fracture under the weight of scrutiny. Ethan's gaze flicked briefly to her, then back to Maya, the moral clarity of the child's courage igniting a sense of responsibility deep within him. Slowly, deliberately, he found an empty side table and inserted the flash drive into his laptop, the soft hum of the device spinning up echoing in the quiet room like a heartbeat, magnifying the anticipation. Maya stepped a little closer, her worn shoes making faint clicks against the marble, and Ethan leaned over slightly, adjusting the screen so that both of them could see, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the first frames. Video after video revealed subtle movements, carefully staged interactions that previously had appeared harmless but now, under the lens of evidence, conveyed intent and deception. The guests shifted in their seats, some craning their necks, others instinctively leaning forward, the tension palpable as the layers of truth began to unfold. Ethan's fingers moved almost automatically, pausing the video at key moments, rewinding, zooming in on the expressions and gestures that confirmed the warning Maya had shouted. Every frame brought a new ripple of understanding, and with each revelation, Isabella's posture stiffened, her carefully controlled composure giving way to imperceptible signs of unease. Maya, sensing the momentum, straightened her back, shoulders squared, the backpack strap creaking softly as she adjusted her stance, a silent statement of determination that Ethan noticed and appreciated. He exhaled slowly, letting the breath carry the weight of responsibility and acknowledgement, turning slightly to gauge the reactions of the room, noting the subtle gasps, the widened eyes, and the sudden stillness as the reality of the situation settled over the gathering. The chandeliers above cast fragmented reflections. Across the floor, catching in Maya's braids and Ethan's focused expression, creating a visual echo of the tension and gravity of the moment. Isabella's lips parted slightly, the first hint of a response, and Ethan, maintaining a calm authority, raised his hands slightly in a gesture that indicated both patience and command, allowing Maya to narrate the key observations she had recorded, her voice steady despite the magnitude of the room's attention. Each statement she made was punctuated by Ethan's nods, silent acknowledgments that built a bridge of trust between them, while Isabella's attempts at deflection grew increasingly tenuous in the face of clear, undeniable evidence. As the final video frame played, the room seemed to exhale collectively, the suspense reaching a peak just before the inevitable confrontation, and Ethan's eyes met Maya's one last time, gratitude, awe, and respect mirrored in his gaze, solidifying the bond forged in the silent understanding of courage, truth, and the unwavering determination of a small girl to stand up in a room of giants. Ethan Caldwell took a steadying breath, letting his gaze sweep across the room, taking in the tension that had settled over the guests, the subtle stiffening of shoulders, the whispered questions that had grown into murmurs, and the way Isabella Hart's carefully controlled smile faltered just enough to reveal the anxiety beneath. He held the flash drive firmly, the small weight grounding him, a reminder of the truth that Maya Johnson had brought into the room with unwavering courage. The child, standing barely 3 feet tall, shifted slightly, her worn sneakers making soft taps on the marble floor, and Ethan noted the quiet determination in the set of her shoulders, the steady light in her brown eyes that refused to be intimidated by the opulent surroundings or the imposing figure of Isabella. He turned slowly, keeping his expression calm but firm, and addressed Isabella directly, his voice resonating through the room without raising in volume. Isabella, I want you to explain exactly what these videos show. The subtle intake of breath from the guests, the soft shuffle of gowns and shoes, created a delicate rhythm of anticipation, emphasizing the weight of the moment. Isabella's lips parted as if to speak, then pressed together again, her eyes darting briefly toward Ethan and then to the floor, hesitation flickering across her features. Maya, sensing the slight pause, leaned just a fraction forward, small hands gripping her backpack strap tightly, her voice calm but unwavering as she added, "It is all in there, sir. Every detail, every action." Ethan nodded once, a slow, deliberate motion that conveyed both acknowledgement and authority, then gestured toward a quiet corner of the room where they could view the flash drive without distraction, the chandeliers overhead scattering light across the polished surfaces, highlighting the tension etched into each expression. Isabella followed, her steps measured, the subtle click of her heels on marble echoing softly as she maintained a composed posture, while her eyes betrayed the uncertainty that was beginning to creep in. Ethan inserted the flash drive into a nearby laptop, and the soft hum of the device filled the brief silence, magnifying the anticipation as the first frame appeared on the screen. Maya stepped closer, her gaze unwavering, narrating clearly the sequence of events she had witnessed, pointing out key gestures and moments with small but deliberate movements, each description a bridge between what had been hidden and the reality that now unfolded before them. Ethan's eyes tracked each frame, pausing occasionally to emphasize critical details, nodding to Maya as a silent affirmation of the accuracy and bravery of her observations. The room remained quiet except for the gentle hum of the laptop and the faint, almost imperceptible rustle of gowns, the guest's attention entirely captured by the unfolding truth. Isabella's expression shifted from controlled calm to a barely perceptible tension. Lips pressed tightly together, hands lightly clutching her purse as Ethan's gaze met hers, steady and unwavering, silently commanding honesty. Maya's voice remained clear, unflinching, each word measured, confident in the knowledge that truth had a power beyond her size or the elegance surrounding her. Ethan leaned, slightly closer to both of them, ensuring that the critical moments were understood and that the implications of what they were seeing were undeniable, the atmosphere dense with anticipation, the guests holding their collective breath. The light from the chandeliers reflected off the polished surfaces, glinting in Maya's hair and in Ethan's eyes, highlighting the convergence of courage, authority, and the undeniable clarity of truth. As the final frames of the video played, Ethan's hand remained steady on the trackpad, his eyes meeting Maya's in a moment of shared understanding, while Isabella's composed demeanor wavered further, the unspoken acknowledgement of exposure threading through her subtle gestures, and in that suspended moment, the tension, the anticipation, and the moral weight of the scene coalesced into a single, electric current of revelation that left the room utterly captivated. Ethan Caldwell carefully closed the laptop, his fingers lingering on the edge of the trackpad for a moment, the weight of what they had just seen pressing heavily in the space between them. Maya Johnson, small and composed, adjusted the straps of her worn backpack, her dark eyes steady as she looked up at him, waiting for the next move, the determination in her stance unwavering despite the grandeur surrounding them. He extended a hand gently, inviting her to step aside with him, and she nodded, the soft tap of her shoes on the marble echoing slightly in the hushed room. Guests whispered quietly among themselves, some craning to see what was unfolding. But Ethan's focus remained entirely on Maya and the need to process the revelation with clarity and care. Isabella Hart remained near the edge of the room, her posture tense, the carefully curated composure of the evening slipping ever so slightly as she sensed the shifting power dynamic, the subtle acknowledgement of exposure threading through her measured expressions. Ethan led Maya toward a quieter corner of the ballroom, past towering floral arrangements and the gleam of polished silver, each step deliberate, the soft murmur of conversation following them but fading just enough to create a semi-private space for what had to happen next. He knelt slightly, lowering himself to be at her eye level, voice calm but firm. "Maya, I want to make sure that what you showed me is completely understood and that you feel safe while we figure out the next step." Maya nodded, her small hands gripping the strap of her backpack, the faint creases on her forehead betraying a mixture of concentration and responsibility beyond her years. The chandeliers above caught in her braids as she shifted slightly, a visual reminder of her presence and courage in the midst of opulence. Ethan guided her toward a small, private alcove just off the main floor, the warm glow of sconces illuminating the marble, casting soft shadows that danced across the walls and gave a sense of intimacy to the moment. He took a deep breath, voice low but resonant. "We will handle this carefully. You did exactly what was right, and now we make sure the truth is seen clearly and fairly." Maya's eyes met his, a quiet acknowledgement passing between them, a shared understanding that her courage had created a responsibility that Ethan could not ignore. The distant sounds of the ballroom, the faint clatter of cutlery, soft footfalls on marble, and murmured questions from guests, faded to a background hum as they discussed a careful plan, mapping each next step without drawing undue attention, preserving the dignity and safety of everyone involved. Ethan's gaze occasionally swept the room, noting the subtle reactions of staff and guests, the way whispers faltered when eyes met his, The way Isabella's poised expression remained tense but restrained, and he understood the importance of moving deliberately, without causing alarm, while ensuring accountability. Maya, standing slightly to one side, held the flash drive tightly, her small figure radiating calm determination, her eyes bright with the quiet pride of knowing she had acted rightly, and Ethan offered a reassuring nod, conveying trust and support without diminishing her courage. The soft glow of the sconces highlighted the contours of their faces, Ethan's serious and focused, Maya's alert and composed, a visual representation of the bridge between authority and moral clarity. And as the brief moment of calm settled over them, they prepared to step back into the ballroom to address the larger truth. Together, with careful precision and unwavering purpose, the air around them charged with anticipation and quiet resolution. Ethan Caldwell and Maya Johnson stepped back into the main ballroom, the hush of the guests enveloping them as every eye followed their movements, the soft gleam of chandeliers scattering across polished floors creating a cinematic tableau of suspense. Maya held the flash drive close, small fingers wrapped tightly around it, the weight of her actions and the responsibility they carried palpable even in the silence. Ethan's expression was measured but firm, his tall frame slightly bent forward as he guided Maya to a position where they could confront Isabella Hart without chaos erupting. The distance between them a careful balance of authority and protection. Guests murmured softly, their whispers threading through the room like a rising tide, curiosity mingling with apprehension, while waitstaff paused in mid-step, holding trays of untouched glasses as they sensed the tension mounting. Isabella, poised but uneasy, straightened her back, the faint flicker of concern in her eyes betraying her otherwise perfect composure, the silk of her gown catching the light and emphasizing the careful control she had tried to maintain. Ethan lifted a hand subtly, signaling for calm, and then gestured toward the laptop where the flash drive's contents remained ready to display, the soft hum of the device a quiet underscore to the charged atmosphere. Maya's voice, steady and clear despite the scrutiny of the room, narrated the key points, pointing out the subtle actions, gestures, and evidence that corroborated her warning, each word precise and deliberate, ensuring that the truth could not be misconstrued. Ethan leaned slightly toward her, nodding occasionally, acknowledging the accuracy of her observations, his eyes conveying trust and admiration for her courage, while Isabella shifted, fingers clutching her clutch a fraction tighter, lips pressing together as she processed the gravity of the mounting evidence. The chandeliers above cast fractured patterns across the room, their light glinting off polished silver, creating a sense of urgency and gravity, the reflections catching in Maya's braids and Ethan's eyes alike, visually framing the confrontation with a quiet intensity. Ethan's voice, calm but carrying authority, addressed the room. Everyone needs to understand that what is being presented here is the result of careful observation and courage. We owe it to the truth to see it fully before passing judgment. The guests, sensing the weight of the statement, shifted in place, some leaning forward, others exchanging quick glances. The energy in the room a mixture of disbelief, tension, and anticipation. Maya stood tall, small frame resolute, her eyes unwavering as she met Ethan's gaze, and Ethan met hers with a firm nod, signaling both acknowledgement and support, the unspoken agreement between them resonating through the quiet hall. Isabella's composure began to crack imperceptibly, the small signs, a blink too long, a faint tightening of the jaw, a subtle shift in posture, revealing the pressure of exposure and the inevitability of accountability. Ethan guided Maya closer to the laptop screen once more, ensuring that every guest could witness the clarity of the evidence without compromising the girl's safety or agency, his tall figure protective yet unobtrusive. The room seemed to hold its collective breath as the final frames were prepared to play, the chandeliers catching the light just so, highlighting Maya's determined expression, Ethan's calm authority, and the subtle tension radiating from Isabella. The scene poised on the precipice of revelation and justice, a tableau of courage, truth, and the quiet power of a child's voice demanding to be heard. Ethan Caldwell watched as Maya Johnson adjusted her small backpack, the subtle rustle of worn straps echoing faintly against the marble floor, a quiet reminder of her presence and determination in the midst of the grand ballroom. Isabella Hart's composed demeanor flickered for the briefest moment, a small tightening of her jaw and a subtle shift of her weight betraying the tension building beneath her poised exterior. Ethan spoke softly but firmly, directing attention to the laptop screen where the flash drive's contents remained ready. "Isabella, we will go through this together. Every detail matters." The words carried authority and calm, commanding attention without raising his voice, and Maya's eyes flicked toward him, a silent affirmation of trust and readiness. The guests leaned forward subtly, the murmur of whispers fading as the weight of the moment anchored their attention. Crystal chandeliers above scattering soft light across polished surfaces, reflecting in Maya's braids and Ethan's focused expression. Isabella's fingers tightened ever so slightly around her clutch, her breath measured, the calm facade she had maintained beginning to show the faintest tremor of concern. Maya spoke clearly, narrating the sequence she had witnessed, her small hands gesturing delicately to highlight key points, every word precise, unwavering, and grounded in observation, while Ethan nodded occasionally, silently validating her courage and accuracy. The room seemed to lean in, collective breaths held, as the hum of the laptop and soft ambient noises became the only soundtrack to the unfolding revelation. Ethan adjusted his stance to give Maya the center of attention, protective yet allowing her agency to lead the disclosure, the subtle interplay between authority and respect grounding the scene. The guests' expressions shifted, a mixture of disbelief and rising comprehension, while Isabella's carefully maintained composure eroded further, the micro-expressions of uncertainty flashing across her face. Ethan's eyes met Maya's briefly, communicating both reassurance and acknowledgement of her bravery, while he continued to guide the presentation of evidence with steady hands and calm gestures. The light caught in the polished surfaces and crystal chandeliers, casting dynamic reflections that seemed to underscore the importance of the truth being revealed, each movement and gesture visually amplifying the tension and suspense. Ethan's voice, measured and deliberate, addressed both the room and Isabella. "We are examining the facts here. Accuracy and honesty will guide our understanding." Maya's gaze remained fixed, a quiet confidence emanating from her stance and clear articulation, reinforcing the integrity of her account. Isabella's attempts to maintain control were increasingly tenuous, subtle signs of discomfort and acknowledgement emerging in small shifts of posture, fleeting eye contact, and the tightening of her lips. Ethan guided Maya's hand lightly to emphasize particular frames on the screen, reinforcing clarity while maintaining her comfort and authority, the delicate balance of support and empowerment evident. The room's energy hung heavy, anticipation and moral gravity filling the space as the final key points were revealed. Ethan's tall frame protective yet unobtrusive, Maya's presence resolute and unyielding, and Isabella, poised yet subtly unsteady, faced the undeniable clarity of the child's observation. The chandeliers reflected light onto the marble floor, across Ethan's focused expression and Maya's determined face, creating a visual resonance that emphasized the convergence of truth, courage, and accountability, the guests collectively absorbing the weight and significance of the revelation. Ethan Caldwell took a deliberate step back, allowing Maya Johnson to remain at the forefront as the focal point of the room, her small frame illuminated by the soft glow of the chandeliers, every braid catching glimmers of light, a visual testament to her courage and the weight of what she had just presented. The murmurs of the guests had quieted to near silence, their attention fully captured by the unfolding revelation, the soft hum of conversations replaced by the palpable tension and the anticipation of accountability. Isabella's heart shifted slightly, her carefully maintained posture tense, the faint twitch of her fingers on her clutch betraying the strain beneath her composed exterior, and Ethan noted every subtle movement, every micro-expression, weighing the room's dynamic and the gravity of the situation. He leaned slightly toward Maya, speaking in a calm but firm tone that resonated clearly above the faint background noise. "Maya, we need to ensure the evidence is preserved and that your observations are fully acknowledged." Maya's dark eyes met his, steady and unwavering, a silent affirmation of trust and readiness, while her small hands held the flash drive with care, aware of the responsibility it carried. Ethan gestured toward a private corner, just enough to give them control without drawing unnecessary attention, the polished marble floor reflecting the soft golden light from above, highlighting the convergence of authority, courage, and truth. The guests, a mixture of socialites, staff, and onlookers, shifted subtly, some craning to see, others instinctively leaning forward, their expressions a combination of disbelief, intrigue, and a dawning recognition of the child's moral clarity. Maya stepped closer to the laptop once more, the worn strap of her backpack creaking softly, and Ethan guided her hand to emphasize critical frames while narrating the events, ensuring clarity without diminishing her agency. Isabella's lips pressed tightly together, the first hints of a response flickering in her eyes, a subtle acknowledgement that the carefully constructed facade of the evening was unraveling, each frame of the video challenging her composure. Ethan's voice, measured and deliberate, addressed both the room and Isabella, conveying authority and fairness. The purpose here is to see the facts clearly and ensure accountability. The details Maya has gathered are precise and necessary for understanding. The chandelier light fractured across the room, casting reflections on marble and crystal that danced subtly with each movement, framing Maya's determined expression, Ethan's composed intensity, and Isabella's growing unease, creating a tableau of suspense and moral clarity. The room's energy thickened, anticipation and ethical weight filling the space as Maya continued to narrate, each word clear, precise, and confident, reinforcing the validity of her observations, while Ethan maintained his protective but unobtrusive presence. The guests remained focused, some leaning forward, others exchanging subtle glances, all acutely aware that the equilibrium of the evening had shifted, that a child's courage had taken precedence over appearances, and that the integrity of truth was the center around which the events now revolved. Ethan's gaze met Maya's briefly, a quiet acknowledgement of shared responsibility, while Isabella's controlled demeanor faltered imperceptibly, the first real signs of concession appearing in the subtle tension of her shoulders and the faint flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. As the evidence continued to be highlighted and the room absorbed the moral gravity of the moment, the chandeliers reflected light across faces and marble, emphasizing the convergence of bravery, authority, and undeniable clarity. The anticipation in the room coalescing into a tense but steady focus on truth and resolution. Ethan Caldwell's gaze remained steady as he guided Maya Johnson closer to the center of the room, the polished marble reflecting the chandeliers above in a cascade of light that seemed to intensify the gravity of the moment. Maya, small but unflinching, clutched the flash drive firmly in her hands, her dark eyes unwavering, silently communicating the seriousness and courage that had brought them to this point. Isabella Hart, standing with a veneer of composure now fragile and thin, shifted slightly, her shoulders taut, lips pressed together, the faintest flicker of unease in her eyes betraying her internal calculation and awareness of the mounting exposure. Ethan spoke calmly, deliberately, his voice carrying a weight of authority that commanded attention without raising volume. Isabella, it is time to address this directly. The evidence is clear and must be acknowledged. The room fell into a hush, the soft hum of distant conversation disappearing as every guest instinctively recognized the pivotal nature of the unfolding confrontation. The stillness punctuated only by the quiet scrape of heels and the gentle clink of glassware. Maya took a small step forward, her posture straight, her voice clear and resolute. "Sir, everything she did is on this. You have to see it, and you have to hear it." Ethan nodded, signaling both trust and support, his tall frame slightly inclined toward her, as if to emphasize that her voice was the center of truth in the space. Isabella's expression flickered, a subtle tightening of the jaw, a brief shift of her weight, and a micro-expression of concern revealed the tension beneath her polished exterior. Ethan gestured toward the laptop once more, the software of the device filling the silence as the first frames of the compiled footage appeared on the screen, each image bringing sharper clarity, each movement documented and undeniable. Maya narrated calmly, pointing out subtle gestures and actions with precise articulation, her small hands accentuating key points while Ethan's nods affirmed the accuracy of her observations, creating a rhythm of clarity that left the room suspended in anticipation. Guests leaned forward, the hush growing deeper, every subtle movement and expression amplified by the quiet, charged atmosphere. The chandeliers above cast dynamic reflections across the polished marble, illuminating Maya's determined stance, Ethan's attentive posture, and Isabella's increasingly fragile composure. Ethan maintained a protective yet unobtrusive presence, guiding Maya's narration and emphasizing critical details, ensuring that the truth was presented fully while preserving the child's agency and authority. Isabella's attempts at composure were increasingly tenuous, subtle signs of stress emerging in her brief glances, shallow breaths, and the tightening of her hands around her clutch. Ethan's voice remained calm, deliberate, and measured, addressing both Isabella and the audience without raising in tone. We must understand every detail accurately. The evidence must speak for itself. Maya's dark eyes met his briefly, a quiet acknowledgement passing between them, reinforcing their shared understanding and the gravity of the moment. The room seemed suspended in a tableau of moral weight, courage, and suspense, the chandeliers casting fractured light across the faces of all present, reflecting the convergence of authority, bravery, and undeniable clarity. Each frame played, every gesture highlighted, and with every passing second, the tension built to its peak, the room collectively holding its breath as the confrontation approached its critical moment. The balance of truth and accountability centered on the unwavering resolve of a small girl and the steady authority of the man who chose to listen. Ethan Caldwell leaned closer to the laptop screen, his tall frame casting a shadow that gently enveloped Maya Johnson, providing a protective presence as the evidence played in full clarity for everyone in the room. Maya's small hands rested lightly on the edge of the table, her dark eyes steady, reflecting both the chandelier's glow and the unwavering determination that had brought her to this moment. Isabella Hart's composure, once meticulously maintained, now showed subtle fractures. A fleeting blink, a tightening of her lips, a barely perceptible shift of her shoulders, each micro-expression betraying the tension that had been building since the first frame appeared. Ethan's voice, calm yet authoritative, resonated across the room. It is essential that the truth is fully understood. Watch carefully and see each detail as it was captured. The guests leaned forward instinctively, the murmured whispers fading as the gravity of the moment demanded their full attention, the soft click of heels and the gentle scrape of chairs punctuating the silence. Maya began to narrate clearly, her voice confident and precise, guiding the viewers through subtle gestures, movements, and the critical sequence of actions that Isabella had hoped would remain hidden, each word carrying the weight of accuracy and moral clarity. Ethan's eyes remained fixed on the screen, occasionally flicking to Maya to silently affirm her observations, his hand steady, holding the laptop in place as the evidence played frame by frame, leaving no room for ambiguity or denial. The chandeliers above scattered light across the polished marble floor, highlighting the expressions of every guest, from fascination to disbelief, and creating a cinematic effect that amplified the suspense and the undeniable clarity of truth. Isabella shifted again, her fingers lightly clutching her clutch, a subtle indicator of the pressure she felt, while Ethan maintained his protective stance, allowing Maya to remain the center of focus, emphasizing that her courage and accuracy had driven the revelation. Each frame on the screen seemed to extend in time, the weight of every second drawing the room deeper into the narrative, every guest becoming acutely aware of the child's insight and the evidence she had brought forth. Ethan's voice provided a steady cadence, directing attention and underscoring the importance of observing carefully, while Maya's gestures punctuated key details, creating a rhythm that reinforced understanding and clarity. The guests, captivated, remained nearly motionless, the chandelier's light reflecting off the polished surfaces, casting delicate patterns that seemed to underscore the moral significance of the scene. Ethan briefly met Maya's eyes, a nod passing between them that acknowledged her bravery and the completeness of the evidence, while Isabella's posture continued to convey subtle signs of concession, the awareness of exposure now undeniable. As the final frames concluded, the room exhaled collectively, the tension giving way to a quiet but profound recognition of truth, and Ethan's gaze swept over the guests, Maya and Isabella, solidifying a tableau of courage, clarity, and accountability, the chandeliers above casting a warm, even glow over the moment of revelation and moral vindication. Ethan Caldwell straightened, his tall figure casting a protective presence around Maya Johnson as the room absorbed the gravity of the final frames, the soft murmur of astonishment and whispered acknowledgement threading through the guests, each of them processing the undeniable clarity of what had been revealed. Maya's small hand still clutched the flash drive, her dark eyes calm and resolute, radiating a quiet authority that belied her age, and Ethan's gaze met hers, a shared understanding passing between them, the weight of courage, truth, and moral clarity forming an unspoken bond. Isabella Hart remained in place, her composure now a thin veneer, lips pressed together tightly, shoulders stiff, eyes flicking between Ethan and the laptop screen, and in the subtle tension of her posture was the recognition that her carefully maintained narrative had been irrevocably dismantled by the unwavering bravery of a child. Ethan's voice, calm, deliberate, and full of measured authority, addressed the room without raising. Everyone needs to understand that what we have just witnessed is a result of careful observation and integrity. The details are clear and must be acknowledged without distortion. Guests shifted slightly, some leaning forward, others exchanging glances. The collective atmosphere thick with realization, curiosity, and the quiet awe inspired by Maya's courage and clarity. The chandeliers above refracted light across polished marble and crystal, creating a delicate interplay of shadows and reflections that mirrored the tension, suspense, and moral weight hanging over the room. Maya stepped forward just a fraction, her small frame poised with dignity, voice steady and clear. "Sir, I only wanted to make sure the truth was seen. That is all. Everyone deserves to know." Ethan nodded subtly, the movement a silent affirmation of her bravery, his eyes conveying both recognition and respect as he guided the room toward understanding, protecting Maya's authority while ensuring the facts were fully visible and undeniable. Isabella's hands clenched lightly at her sides, subtle tremors betraying the internal reckoning with exposure, the delicate shift from outward composure to a quiet acknowledgement of reality. Ethan gestured to the room, his tone firm yet controlled. "This evidence demonstrates integrity, observation, and accountability. It is crucial that we respond appropriately." The guests remained focused, the gentle hum of the room accentuating the weight of his words, each individual caught between astonishment and the realization that a child's perspective had illuminated truths hidden from view. Maya's posture remained upright, her eyes steady, the chandeliers casting highlights in her hair, reinforcing the visual resonance of courage and moral clarity, while Ethan's presence grounded her, an anchor of authority that allowed her voice to carry and be respected. The soft reflection of light on marble and crystal created a cinematic tableau, capturing the quiet power of integrity, the impact of observation, and the ripple effect of truth in motion. Ethan and Maya exchanged a brief, meaningful glance, a nod of understanding, as the room absorbed the scene, the tension now giving way to an almost tangible acknowledgement of accountability, respect, and the validation of courage. And in that suspended moment, the chandelier's glow illuminated the moral clarity, the bravery, and the profound weight of truth standing in the heart of the room, leaving every guest silently contemplating the power of honesty, observation, and unwavering integrity. Ethan Caldwell exhaled slowly, his tall frame straightening as he surveyed the room, the soft glow from the chandeliers reflecting in his focused eyes while the guests remained hushed, captivated by the culmination of evidence and revelation that had unfolded. Maya Johnson stood at his side, small but unwavering, the flash drive still in her hands, her dark eyes bright with the quiet pride of having acted rightly, the set of her shoulders firm, radiating a calm authority that drew the attention and respect of everyone present. Isabella Hart's composed exterior had given way to subtle tension, her lips pressed tightly together, shoulders stiff, and hands lightly clutching her clutch as the realization of exposure settled into her expression, the careful narrative she had maintained unraveling under the scrutiny of clarity and truth. Ethan's voice, steady and deliberate, carried across the room, authoritative but calm. "What has been revealed here is a matter of integrity and observation. We acknowledge the courage it took to bring this to light." The guests, sensing the moral weight of the statement, shifted in their seats, some leaning forward with curiosity, others exchanging quiet glances, the atmosphere thick with anticipation and the dawning comprehension of the gravity of the situation. Maya's posture remained upright, her small frame exuding composure. As she stepped slightly closer, soft taps of her worn shoes on the marble floor marking each movement, her voice confident and clear. "Sir, I only wanted the truth to be seen and heard. That is all." Ethan nodded subtly, his eyes meeting hers, a quiet affirmation of her bravery and the responsibility she had carried, while he maintained a calm, protective presence around her, signaling to the room that her voice, small as it was, commanded respect. The chandeliers cast fractured light across the polished marble floor, glinting in Maya's braids, Ethan's composed expression, and Isabella's strained posture, creating a cinematic tableau that underscored the moral significance of the moment. Ethan gestured toward the guests, his tone firm yet measured. "It is imperative that accountability and honesty guide our response. The clarity of observation must be honored and respected." The murmurs that had begun to rise were quelled by the weight of his words, the room collectively acknowledging the significance of a child's courage standing against deception, and the way integrity had been illuminated through careful attention and moral clarity. Maya's eyes met Ethan's briefly, a nod of mutual understanding passing between them, reinforcing their shared recognition of responsibility and moral purpose, while Isabella's subtle gestures continued to betray her awareness of exposure and the undeniable power of the truth now evident to all. The soft hum of the room, punctuated by faint shuffles of movement and whispered exhalations, contrasted with the intensity of focus on the unfolding tableau, the chandelier's light playing across faces and marble surfaces, amplifying the visual resonance of courage, authority, and moral clarity. Ethan and Maya stood together, a quiet partnership of protective guidance and determined observation. As the room absorbed the weight of revelation, the tension shifting to recognition and acknowledgement, leaving every guest aware of the profound impact of bravery, truth, and unwavering integrity. Ethan Caldwell lowered the laptop gently onto the side table, the soft hum ceasing as the final frame of the evidence illuminated the room, leaving a quiet tension that hung heavy like a delicate silk curtain suspended in the golden glow of the chandeliers. Maya Johnson, small and composed, stepped slightly forward, her worn shoes clicking softly on the polished marble, the flash drive still resting in her tiny hands, a symbol of courage and clarity that had guided the entire evening. Ethan's tall frame stood protectively beside her, his eyes calm but intense, scanning the room as every guest absorbed the unfolding truth, the atmosphere thick with awe, respect, and a hint of disbelief. Isabella Hart's carefully maintained composure had fully unraveled. Her shoulders dropped slightly, her hands pressed together nervously, and her lips remained tightly closed as she processed the undeniable exposure of her actions. Ethan turned his gaze toward her, voice steady and commanding, yet tempered with fairness. "The truth has been presented clearly and indisputably. It is now incumbent upon us to act with integrity and understanding." The murmurs of the crowd, subdued until now, began to ripple with quiet acknowledgement, the subtle movements of the guests, leaning forward, exchanging glances, soft intake of breath, signaling collective recognition of the weight of the moment. Maya's dark eyes met Ethan's briefly, a shared glance that spoke volumes of trust, bravery, and the unspoken bond forged between a child who had acted rightly and the man who had chosen to listen. The chandeliers above scattered fractured light across marble and crystal, catching in the braids of Maya's hair, reflecting off Ethan's focused gaze and highlighting Isabella's tense posture, creating a cinematic interplay of light that underscored the convergence of courage, accountability, and authority. Ethan guided Maya slightly forward, allowing her to step into the center of the room as the symbolic witness to the moral clarity that had been achieved, her small presence commanding attention, every movement deliberate and poised, a visual testament to the power of truth and determination. Isabella's eyes flickered toward the flash drive, then to Maya, and finally to Ethan, a silent acknowledgement of the exposure, the subtle shift of her weight betraying acceptance and the realization that deception could no longer hold sway. Ethan's hand rested lightly on the edge of the table, his posture calm, reassuring, and protective, giving Maya the space to maintain her agency while the room absorbed the finality of the revelation. The soft echoes of whispered acknowledgement filled the spaces between the marble columns and crystal reflections, the guests collectively holding their breath in reverence for the courage that had been displayed. Maya, standing upright with quiet pride, released the flash drive into Ethan's hands, the gesture both symbolic and literal, passing the weight of responsibility to the adult who had validated her actions. Ethan nodded slightly, eyes meeting hers with a silent communication of gratitude, admiration, and respect, as the chandelier's light bathed them in a warm glow, the room now collectively acknowledging the undeniable presence of truth, integrity, and moral courage. A moment suspended in clarity and the shared understanding that justice, when guided by observation and bravery, could prevail even in the most opulent and intimidating of settings.